Welcome to Should You Idle, a series where I play all of the top idle games so you don't have to. In this series, I provide a comprehensive breakdown of the chosen idle game to hopefully answer the question, is idling this game worth your time? Our ranking criteria for all of the games reviewed on this series are as follows. Idle level is the first indicator, and it's used to identify how idle the game really is. Measuring a game's idleability is complex, but it will be broken down into simpler terms later in the video. If you want to know more in depth on how this is measured, please feel free to click the card on screen now. Content level, as you could assume, demonstrates how much content there is to explore in the game. How often is the game being updated? What's the level of endgame? Why should you continue to play? All of these questions will hopefully be answered within the content level segment of this video. Cash level is a general indicator of how much money you need to purchase the game. A lot of these idle games are free to play, so if it's a free game, cash level indicates how microtransactions are promoted and if purchases are used as pay-to-win boosters. Hardware level. This is just used as a quick overview on how taxing the program is. When the game is running at full capacity, how much does it affect your device? You'll find that out in this segment. Mr.Mine is an idle game currently on mobile and Steam that revolves around getting rich from mining different types of minerals. Idle your way through the mines, unearth treasures, and discover what mysteries lie in the depths below. The goal of this game is to dig as deep as you can go and hire as many miners as you can to get the most amount of minerals possible. These minerals are in turn used to purchase new upgrades and to unlock new types of content. Mr.Mine has been out for some time, but the game often goes months at a time without updates. The last update for this game was in April of 2022 of this year, so at the time recording is about half a year ago. Before I get into my breakdown, as usual, let's touch on the features of Mr.Mine that might not be brought up later in the analysis section. Free to play. This game is currently completely free to play. Offline progression. This game does have an offline progression system, however, it must be unlocked in-game and starts out at 25% efficiency without any upgrades. So there is an offline progression system, but you must buy it with in-game currency and slowly upgrade yourself up to 100% offline efficiency. Online/multiplayer. There is no online or multiplayer as of yet. This includes no clans, guilds, or leaderboards with your Steam friends. Cloud saving. There is cloud saving through the default Steam system. Inspired endgame. This game kind of has an inspired endgame, which means the endgame has new content to explore and it's not the same thing over and over again. However, the game still is like 90% the same, so that there's a small bit of inspired endgame, but the game is relatively the same no matter where you are. Does it have an end? At the time of making this video, the game does not have an end. You can progress infinitely, and there's still going to be new things to buy and new things to make yourself more powerful. True automation. Is there a stage in this game where you just need to have it open to progress? Yes and no. Fairly on in the game, once you've upgraded your inventory enough, you won't really have to do anything for hours. We'll get to this later, but your interaction is still kind of required. Unique playstyles. This game's late game progression is highly based around RNG. Odds are, if you and a friend play the game at the exact same time, you both will have different builds and outcomes. However, this doesn't really make it a playstyle, since you're forced to work with what the game gives you, so you're just going to have different RNG than your friend. These are simply yes and no's to the most common sought-after idle game features. It doesn't make the game good or bad. In fact, you might prefer a game that has less features and is easier to understand. This is just an unbiased breakdown for you to gauge your interest, and it's not an opinion piece at all, unlike the rest of this video. With that being said, let's move on to my personal breakdown of Mr.Mine. Idle level. Mr.Mine earns a 70% idle level at its core. It has integrated features that force you to interact with the game, making it less idle. However, these are bypassable with some changes to the code. And I know what you're thinking. I'm not a programmer myself, but these were still very easy to follow guides, and they're located on the Steam page. These guides allow you to add an extra line or two of code to automate a couple processes that are locked behind interaction normally. And for the majority of you that haven't played the game yet, let me explain with some examples. Mr.Mine has an inventory system, which I briefly touched on in the features category. If your inventory fills up, you stop mining materials, you basically stop earning money. This requires you to log back into the game and sell your stock, or else you'll stagnate. There's a line of code to fix this and to auto-sell your inventory at max capacity. I don't know why this isn't in the game to begin with. I don't know why this isn't a feature that you could buy with enough minerals or materials in the game, but that's just how Mr.Mine is. Another thing are mob battles. Mob battles in Mr.Mine are originally unautomated. You have to click each weapon as they come off cooldown to use it. This means PvE content, which is very common by the way. requires needlessly high levels of interaction. However, there's a line of code you can add that auto-pops these abilities off cooldown, making PvE content much more palatable and efficient. Treasure chests in Mr.Mine spawn throughout your mine shaft randomly, and you have to scroll down and collect them. Unfortunately, treasure chests in the late game are responsible for how you get your blueprints. If you miss out on a chest, especially a golden chest, you could unironically set yourself back real-life days worth of playtime. These treasure chests are all RNG based anyway, but wouldn't it just be better to collect them all so you can keep the RNG to a minimum? As I'm sure you can tell by now, there's a pattern. Of course, there's a line of code you can add so that any chest spawned will be instantly opened and collected. Even with these examples, there are still many things in Mr.Mine that require your constant interaction. Using the forge to create gems, upgrading your weapons, deploying scientists, exploring caves, etc. These are all important functions for progression in Mr.Mine, but are locked behind constant player interaction. That being said, this game is still extremely idle, and I personally quite like the balance of interaction within Mr.Mine. I do use quite a few of the code modification changes to increase the level of automation within the game. However, there are some I don't use because I feel like they're too cheaty. You can give yourself unlimited oil or unlimited building materials, and I just never did that on my original playthrough. Ultimately, in my opinion, it's upsetting to see simple things like inventory management and mob battles aren't originally automated, and the community had to band together to figure out a way to make these systems easier to use. Clearly, we can see with a few changes to the code, the game becomes 5 times more palatable, and I don't know why the game isn't like that by default. If you're willing to change all the lines of code you possibly can, I kid you not, Mr.Mine would jump from a 70% idle level to like an 85%. If you don't want to touch the code at all, and you're willing just to play vanilla, you're looking at about a 70% idle level experience. Content level. Mr.Mine earns a 60% when it comes to overall content level. The game, in essence, as I previously mentioned in the feature segment, is 90% the same all the time. However, there are interesting locations and content to unlock during your time in the game. There are loads of interesting and new mechanics and systems to keep you engaged in the gameplay and to make your drill and miners more powerful. You start the game on Earth and move to new locations in space like the Moon or Titan in our solar system. Each of these new locations offers new abilities, items, mechanics, and upgrades with additional hidden secrets to discover. However, Mr.Mine does not earn a higher content level due to the time commitment required to explore this content. Please heed my warning and the #1 complaint for this game. It is grindy, it is slow, and progression is based off luck. Yes, of course, there's a lot of content and upgrades to explore in this game, that's undeniable. However, it takes you hundreds and thousands of hours to explore it. Normally, that's a great thing for a game. Hundreds of hours of content in Skyrim, sign me up. But the problem lies in Mr.Mine with the gap of each new area of content in Mr.Mine. If you get unlucky and you don't unlock any drill improvements, you'll get stuck here like me and have to wait 10 hours to drill 1 kilometer. If it takes me 10 hours to dig a kilometer and I have 100 more kilometers to go, that's 400 real-life hours of drilling. And I still have a chance during that entire time to discover no new upgrades. Mr.Mine tends to become a time sink, an endless grind for most players. Although it is actually a great idle experience, the progression is based off RNG and chance. So if you get unlucky, you'll get stuck and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to play more. This game would probably have an 80%, 85% content level if progression wasn't so slow and tied to luck so heavily. Mr.Mine truly has a lot to explore, and I want to make sure that's very clear. It's just really discouraging for most players when they see that timer tick down ever so slowly and they know they're going to be stagnating for days, if not weeks, until their next milestone. Cash level. Mr.Mine has a respectable cash level at 20%. There is a microtransaction shop, however, it's literally never advertised. Within the shop, you can buy tickets, and tickets can be used to buy chests, but more likely you're buying gold chests with these tickets. Golden chests can be found in the wild at a 0.6% chance, but they provide very good bonuses. These chests are more likely to provide blueprints to upgrade your drill so you can reduce your mining time and progress further. They can also provide crazy time lapses of 6 to 12 hours or more. The reason Mr.Mine gets a 20% cash level and not lower is this microtransaction shop, in my opinion, is set up in a way to kind of prey on players who have stagnated in progression. Players who are stuck and don't want to wait 400 hours for the next milestone are more likely than not to buy these chests to try and get the new blueprints. Additionally, on top of that, if you ignore that, the chests are still RNG. It's essentially a loot box with the chance of getting something you're looking for in an idle game. That's really not an appropriate mechanic for an idle game that's based on efficiency. Loot boxes are never good in any game, especially when you have to pay real money for them. So for that reason, Mr. Mine gets a 20% and not lower. Hardware level, 60%. Mr. Mine is an incredibly rocky and buggy experience, and for that reason earns a 60%. I have never played an idle game that requires so little memory to physically crash my computer 2 times. The game itself is an extremely easy thing to run, barely noticeable on your computer on a regular day, but the game itself is extremely buggy and prone to crashes. When I start up the game, I usually have to launch it 3 to 4 times before it actually works. I should have unedited footage in the background for you to see this firsthand. And during this footage, you'll also see the amount of freezes and white screens it has, where I just have to close it and try again. On top of that, of course, as I previously mentioned, this game has crashed my computer twice, causing my screens to flicker and lag out. I have never played an idle game with this level of unreliability. That being said, I have played for over 200 hours now, and the full computer crashes only happened near the start of my experience and hasn't really happened again, but the game still regularly freezes and bugs out. Fortunately, I believe the autosave goes off every 30 seconds, so you're never really losing that much, but obviously, still annoying. It is also my assumption that this game is no longer receiving support from the developers, and I'm basing this assumption off what I'm seeing in the reviews and forum posts. The community tends to believe that the developers have kind of abandoned this project, but who knows how reliable it is, so take that as you will. And of course, depending on your PC, you may crash more or less than other players. Some people report little to zero issues, and some can't even launch the game. So really trying to play Mr. Mine is a gamble, but hey, Mr. Mine is pretty much based off RNG, so why not let your computer being able to run the game also be run on RNG? Conclusion. Overall, Mr. Mine is incredibly content-rich, but an incredibly slow experience. There's actually an insane amount of content to explore, however, you are unfortunately time-gated behind slow progression and random chance generators to get blueprints to speed up your progress. This is the game's fatal flaw in my opinion. I can overlook poor software and hardware dependencies, but the fact that progression is tied to luck and chance makes it fundamentally an inefficient experience for most players. Additionally, the game is so grindy and slow it forces the player base to modify game files to have a somewhat enjoyable experience. With that being said, I found myself playing more of Mr. Mine than a lot of other idle games I have reviewed in this series. The first 150 hours of gameplay is packed with new minerals, content, and locations to explore. It really is a fantastic game until you hit that RNG progression wall at about 150 to 200 hours in. You can also see very easy achievements for this game are extremely rare. Returning to the game, aka launch it for the second time, only has about a 30% completion rate. Players are just choosing not to come back to Mr. Mine 70% of the time, and I actually think that's unwarranted. I do think this game is actually really good, and I really did enjoy my time playing it. However, I do understand that players who want the most efficient playthroughs and efficient endgames will likely not enjoy Mr. Mine due to the fact that chance is an integral part of progression. Overall, I think Mr. Mine is definitely worth a try, if your computer can open it, of course. The first 100 hours or so definitely gets you hooked, at least it did for me, but if you're someone who wants a reliable and consistent idle experience, which I assume is most of you, this game probably isn't for you. Thank you so much for watching my review on Mr. Mine. I hope you learned something new, and if you did, make sure to drop a like. If you want to suggest new idle games for me to play, make sure to also drop those in the comments below, and I'll make sure to take a look. If you want to learn more about the top idle games before you play them, make sure to subscribe and stick around for my Should You Idle series. Thanks again for watching if you stuck around for this long, and I hope to see you in the next one.